recording on Sunday night with Martin's microphone. He brought it with him.
We've now all got Blue Yeti, completely independently examined the market, bought new mics, all got Blue Yeti.
Yes, I have. The only time I buy a mic is about an hour before a podcast when I realise my last mic isn't working.
Depends on which other mic is available.
Yeah. Most massive is what I think.
The first 5 minutes of every podcast was John saying, "Where's your pop shield?" And we're going, "Oh yeah, I'm getting it back out of the shop."
Yeah, I recently worked out that the reason that I had so much noise to edit out was because Pope wasn't using the pop shield. As soon as I got him to do that, everything would be better.
We stopped using pop shields about a year ago. I don't think there's much difference.
You know, Pope on the show.
Maybe. I think the reason we got them was Paul Hudson before. Apparently he just slapped the mic.
Yeah, because when Aaron laughs, you get like everyone else's track with just like a normal waveform, and then he's did this weird thing where it like did some sort of figure of 8 and clicked like all the time. I kept on having to like clean it up.
Pick to pipe and pick to peck and pick to peck.
How we doing?
I assume we probably want to wait for 5 minutes or so for everyone to finish and we have a talk.
I know, do we?
I mean, it's like a bit of, otherwise what will happen is they'll come, this is when things on.
Yeah,
So otherwise what happens, they'll all come in
yeah,
while the thing is running.
yeah. Can we ask the crew to round people up? That's what I think we've done.
They don't have to come. It's not
No, but I mean let people know that
Bloody well,
we're...
it is.
See the assembled panel?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you should get the crew to say.
Oh, I'll get the crew to at least find out whether all the other ones are finished.
Yeah, yeah.
On the count of 3, we'll all just shout and
Some, there's going to be a crew person somewhere with a mic with a walkie-talkie.
Or like get them to finish. Tell her they're over time and they need to shut up.
So we are very clearly at stoppage time now.
So did you do the short store?
Well, apparently there's a great joke lined up that needed me to be in.
Oh,
But it's got to be fantastic. He made me switch me and Graham switch for this joke. Graham made that better. Got to be fair.
They're unfortunately on the other side of the world at the moment.
Yeah, he's been a bit hard. Well, the blind use robot.
Right then, good afternoon, Oggcamp. How's everyone doing? Have you had a nice day today so far? Looking forward to tomorrow as well with the hangover. So you're probably wondering who I am, and you're probably wondering why Fab isn't doing this, and that's why it's mostly empty seats probably. Traditionally, well, Oggcamp was started by podcasters, Linux Outlaws and the Ubuntu podcast, and so this has always been traditionally in this slot. But Fab decided that he's too famous and going to be on TV too much to grace us with his presence, so he stuck with me. I'm Joe. I do a few podcasts, you might say. Linux Luddites being the main one, I suppose. And also, I do a show about the Raspberry Pi called The Pi Podcast, which is much newer and has much fewer listeners, so do check it out. Well, they're both just .com, so it's quite easy. But yeah, I should have done that. Right, so we should start off with some thanks. First of all, I don't think Dan's still here, is he? But we've got to give him a round of applause. I know he's had some medical problems. He blogged about that, and we're all, hoping that he gets better. But the fact that he even made it at all today deserves a round of applause, I think. And of course, we've got to thank the chief himself, Les, for running the crew. For the last time, he said on Twitter recently, he's stepping down after this event. He's done an absolutely brilliant job so far, and he's got very big shoes to fill. I know I wouldn't fancy it. So, yeah, Let's have a round of applause for Les as well. And of course, the rest of the crew who have worked brilliantly as usual and made things run really smoothly from what I can see. There haven't been hardly any problems at all, at least on the surface of things. Maybe frantic radio conversations might not might not say that. And also, everyone for coming, because although we wouldn't have an Oggcamp if it weren't for the organisers and the sponsors and everything, which we'll get to, if people didn't turn up, it wouldn't happen. So for everyone who's here today, give yourselves a round of applause for coming. So a quick mention of the sponsors then. First of all, Entroware. Now, I don't know if you've seen, they've got a table in the exhibition space, proper Linux laptops that come pre-installed with no PPAs and no hassle, and also decent support as well. They told me today, lifetime support. So, you know, if your machine lasts 10 years, which hopefully it will, then they will give you software support for all that time. So they've been really good in being the main sponsor of this event. So thanks a lot to them. And also Ubuntu, supported by Canonical. And Fedora as well, and Linux Voice, some podcast, I don't know who they are, they've also helped out again, so thanks guys. And again, the Oggcamp community who have, didn't have to donate, you didn't have to pay to come here, but a lot of you have, and you've helped make the event happen, so well done. And oh yeah, of course, the venue, Open Labs and Liverpool John Moores University, because the venue is just brilliant, isn't it? And without that, we would have been stood in the car park in the rain. So right then, so the panel. On the right hand side is Mark Johnson, who is from the Ubuntu podcast and organised last year's event in Oxford, and that was a very, very good event, and he did a brilliant job. So good, in fact, that we're willing to forgive him for the £10 buffet.
Not my buffet.
And next we've got a genuine celebrity, a Grammy Award winner, someone who's filled Wembley Stadium on his own. Oh, no, hang on. No, this says that it is Ben Everard. So, yes, no, it's Ben Everard from Linux Voice, a brilliant free software magazine that's promoting the cause and doing excellent work for Linux and open source. Produced using a Mac. And so, yeah, obviously the Linux Voice podcast as well as the magazine. Next up, Stuart Langridge, or ACK, who currently is doing Bad Voltage, which is quite a popular podcast, so I hear. I've never listened to it. No, I have really, Stuart, don't worry. And was the founding member, one of the founding members of Lug Radio as well, which I believe, was that the first ever Linux podcast? Mike?
The Linux Link Tech Show, I think, were ahead of us, but they were rubbish.
One of the first ever Linux podcasts.
We were early.
Yeah. And Stuart recently described as John O'Bacon's dog, who gets told to, get down, boy, by Pete Cannon. Yeah. So. And our final member, Pete Cannon, from the Dick Turpin Roadshow, who, what's your qualification for being on this? You've been to every single Oggcamp, I believe.
I've been to every single Oggcamp, yeah.
Yeah, and a strong advocate for Linux open source and Creative Commons, of course. So what are we actually going to be talking about today? Well, I saw this sticker, ironically enough, or a photo of it, on Google+. There is no cloud, it's just someone else's computer. Now, the fact is that laptop sales and traditional computers, the sales of them are dwindling. They're waning, just quarter after quarter, they keep going down and down and down. And what's replacing them? Mobile devices. Okay, maybe not here, although I'm looking around and seeing tablets and phones and things. But the average normal person, most of them just want to use a tablet or a phone these days. And so what that means is most of the computing that is happening on someone else's computer. Whereas there was a time when it would happen on a computer like that, and you would actually be in control of things. Now, effectively, you've just got a terminal and it's just connecting to some other person's computer where your data is stored and the actual computing is taking place. And so, essentially, we've got three questions. The first one is that a bad thing, or is it, in fact, a good thing? And so, I put that first question to the panel. Who's going to be first? Ben, you go first.
Can you hear me okay? I think there's sort of separate aspects of this, because on the one hand, I think it's quite a good thing that it's much easier just to maintain your computer. Your average Joe doesn't care about having the latest this or that, or installing security updates or anything like that. They just want a computer that works. And the cloud actually does a really good job of that. If you've got a web browser, you've got access to everything. Of course, on the bad side, it's people are giving you those services for free because they're selling your data onto advertisers or something like that. And so I guess it's finding a balance between the thing. Can you get these great services through a web browser that just work, but actually have some privacy and security there? If you can do that, I think it's a wonderful thing.
Okay, and Mark?
Well, I'd like to just start off by saying that the word cloud is stupid and I hate it. I mean, when we talk about cloud, we're usually talking about one of 3 or 4 things: software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or various other things. And a lot of the time when people use the word cloud, they don't really know what it is they mean, or they think they're talking about one of those things when they're actually talking about another one of those things. So I find the term cloud quite a dangerous one to use because it's so poorly defined. However, that said, when it comes down to whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, some of those things I think are brilliant. I mean, infrastructure as a service is immensely powerful, useful, versatile thing which will allow developers and companies who would normally have to have their own infrastructure in-house and set up their own data centers and be able to buy all this hardware themselves, set it up themselves, admin it themselves. They can then just outsource that and very quickly scale up their what they want to do, which is to create a system and give their services out to the world and make some money. That's great. The thing that I find more concerning is when we're talking about end user services, where instead of having your data stored locally and processed locally, you're saying, well, you're being encouraged not to even think about your data as your own. You're encouraged to just rely on the services for everything. And I think we're seeing that from an increasingly young age as well. Children in school are being given Google Apps accounts, which teaches them that your data lives in Google. You don't have a hard disk with your stuff on, which you keep private and encrypted and no one else can read that. Google does that for you, and I think that's quite a dangerous mindset for us to get into.
It's hard to disagree with this more. Fine, I got it, yes. We give children in schools a Google Apps account, and that teaches them their data lives in Google. What we should be teaching them instead is how to configure Exim, because that's what's important, right? It isn't. I agree with you in theory that it's not a good idea to hand over being a system administrator to someone else. But equally, I don't want to be a system administrator. I'm really, really, really bad at it. I would like to pay someone else to do that for me. Now, it would be nice if I had the option of paying them with money rather than paying them with my personal data. But there are plenty of things like that, right? There are bunches of services where instead, if you don't want to use Gmail because you're worried about your data being in the cloud, the problem is not it's in the cloud, it's that it's in Google's cloud and Google are doing worrying things with it. Whereas there are a whole bunch of email services, as an example, who will take money off of you instead of personal data and then provide you with a service. And what you're doing is you're outsourcing being a system administrator, which is a rubbish thing to do if you don't like it. I want people who want to do this to have the ability. It's important that you can go out and buy a laptop and configure it yourself and store your own data personally yourself if you want to, definitely. That ability should not go away. But neither should we force people to do it, because we, the open source community, the Linux community, we spent 20 years trying to convince people that this stuff is important, and we have done a supernaturally poor job of having the people outside in the world understand why we think it's important to compile your own kernel. People don't care. And we should stop trying to make them care and build things that people want, rather than insisting that people come over to what we see as the light side.
Okay, we've got a question from the audience. Where's Jesse with his rhyming mic? Has he gone out? probably easier for me to just do this if this is long enough.
Question from John the Nice Guy.
Question from John the Nice Guy. Am I? I don't know if this is big. Yep, come on. Right, okay. So, I take your point, Ak. Yes, it's a good thing that we're not asking people to be sysadmins. And so what we do is we've centralized email in about 12-ish mail servers and then like a handful of boutiques. Fantastic, okay. So now the GCHQ, NSA, whoever just needs to go and say, you 12 companies, I want email about random person in the audience. So how do we solve that problem? Because essentially what we're saying is, yeah, we don't want people to be mail admins, understand that, but surely what we should be saying instead of be a mail admin is let's make tools for people so that they don't need to think about being a mail admin, they just have an app that does it. Anyone? And it goes to the audience.
The way you solve the problem, you hear people say don't put all your eggs in one basket, but actually what you should do is put all of your eggs in one basket and then make sure it's a really, really good basket. Instead of insisting that everyone learns enough about security and protection to protect themselves, I'd much rather we pick someone like Google who are full of proper encryption professionals and then have them be someone we can trust. What worries me about the concern that you say, oh, well, the NSA could just attack one of these 12 companies, is the implicit assumption there is it is impossible for anyone to be a company and be trustworthy. Right? And that's just not, I'd much rather Google worked hard to protect. Apple have done a bunch of work to keep things private and to make sure iMessage is encrypted end to end and so on and so forth. And that's good, but an awful lot of us are like, no, we don't want to trust a company at all, I want to do it myself. And I want you to have the ability to do it yourself. Install Telegram and use secret chats, that's great, not a problem at all, right? Use GPG if you want to. But we shouldn't insist that everyone has to do that. And that's the alternative. Find someone we can trust and then trust them. Is what I think.
But what, is Google or Apple the answer then? Surely not.
Why would it not be? Everyone else outside this room thinks they are. We can't be that weird, surely. Let's pick an example, right? And you're saying Google and Apple, they can't be the answer. Hands up if you've got a Google account.
How many hands can I put up?
And I have no second question.
Just to come back, you said how can you sort of solve that problem of there being a few places? To me, that actually seems like quite a good situation to be in, where there's 12 different companies all doing it. So if you imagine what people like Facebook are trying to do is pull it all into one platform. So at the moment we've got 12, it could be that there's only one. And the solution to that problem is standards. By making email open, by making it federated, anyone can set up an email server. And that's what I think we should really be looking for in things like email and cloud stuff, is to make it so that anyone can do it.
What, not letting Facebook Messenger overtake email and replace it permanently, is what you're talking about?
By not letting any one platform encapsulate an entire area in the way that, say, Facebook with WhatsApp is trying to do.
Yeah. Look like you've got something to say, Pete. Right, question over here. I may as well use this mic.
I think one of the things that helps make this really easy is if everything is encrypted properly and securely by, whether the encryption is written by good people, intelligent people like some of the people at Google, etc. If we all have easy to use encryption end to end, then nobody needs to care about anything else, including NSA stuff.
The trouble with that is if we want a company like Google to provide these services for free, then if everyone is encrypting everything that goes through, then that completely ruins their business model because they can't harvest the data. Yep. So it relies on the fact that we'd all be willing to pay for all of these services and encrypt everything.
That's not completely true, because you can have an advertising supported service that doesn't mine all your data. If you look at what DuckDuckGo do, and what they've talked about is how much of their revenue comes from data mining and how much just comes from advertising.
The problem with doing that is that then you're not getting ads which are relevant to you. And God knows if I'm going to get ads, then if I've decided to, we have collectively decided to fund the internet through advertising, I might as well be advertising for things I might actually buy.
So have a profile set where you can set these are the things I'm interested in, but they don't mind the rest of your data.
No one will fill it in. Nobody will fill that in. Yeah, I mean, you can potentially invent new ways, and people could be doing that. I mean, look at Google Contributor. So instead of getting ads, you can pay them money every month, and then they show you where they would show you ads. They show you a little box saying, hooray, no ads for you, because you paid the money instead. That kind of thing is a good idea. Now, I mean, I don't for a moment want to suggest that we should just go, fine, let Google protect us, it's all fine, not a problem. Right? What we need is other people to work on this stuff. Whoever comes up with a way of selling privacy as a feature, as something that comes up with a way of making people care about it, whoever does that will define the next 10 years of computing. It was mobile, and then it was social, and next it will be privacy. But every company we've seen so far, you look at sort of Blackphone or someone like that, or Telegram, or Whisper Secure, whatever the hell they're called, those are all the ICQ who were around before Facebook starts up. Someone is going to come up with a way of pitching the idea of a private service so that real people get it and desire it and want it, and then those people will usher in the next big revolution in computing. I would like it to happen today rather than 5 years from now.
But you're confident it's going to happen, because you're much more confident about that than I am.
If it doesn't happen, then whatever, you get your emails read, there's nothing we can do about it. I think it's the only way out of the problem. But the point about doing that is the way you beat the incumbents is by coming up with a new playing field that they can't compete with you on. Apple couldn't beat Microsoft on the desktop, right? So they invented a whole new platform, smartphones, in which they're dominant and Microsoft aren't, and now Apple's the biggest company in the world. The way you beat Google and Facebook, whose revenue model is entirely architected around taking your data and using it, is by selling the idea, convincing everyone that sharing your data is a bad thing, and then Google can't compete. What they can do, stop being Google to compete with you? They'll be Microsoft, and you'll be the people who are winning. Yep, it is exactly what Apple are doing now, which is why they're the biggest company in the world. Because their data model, Apple's data model, is not based around your data, it's based around the money in your wallet. They don't have to monetize your data, because they've monetized your money by paying. I mean, admittedly, it means one of their laptops costs 1,500 quid, but the point is, Apple make 28% on every single product they sell. They don't need to collect your data and flog it to dodgy advertising companies, because they've already got all of the money in the world. So they can afford to compete on things like privacy, which Google cannot compete with them on.
Now, you talked about it as if it's some future that's coming one day, but it's already here. We've got WhatsApp. Now, don't get me wrong, I know that WhatsApp isn't as secure and private as they are selling it as, but why do people who are not particularly techie, they run Windows, they can handle their system, but they're saying to me, oh, use WhatsApp, oh, it's encrypted, it's really private, because they've been sold that idea. They've been sold just exactly what you're talking about. The privacy, with the NSA stuff and the Snowden revelations, privacy is on the agenda, but by some means, WhatsApp have convinced a whole lot of people that they are the solution, when clearly they're not. So what do we do about that?
What do you mean, what do we do about it? Everyone's using a private messaging service. Hooray! This is good, right? Now, Bernie, I don't like WhatsApp. I said earlier that the thing you do is you find some people to trust and then you trust them. I don't trust WhatsApp at all, because every time someone builds an open WhatsApp client, WhatsApp DMCA out of existence, right? Screw those people, not interested in working with them. But, as you say, they have managed to at least partially. I'm not sure there are that many people who are going, well, I could use Facebook Messenger, but I'll move to WhatsApp because it's encrypted.
I think you'd be surprised.
But equally, when they are there, they're seeing it as a motive to be there, and that's a good thing. Our problem is, as ever, what WhatsApp have got is a reasonably good technical solution and good marketing. And just building a better mousetrap doesn't work, otherwise everyone would be an Ubuntu user, right?
But I guess
or, Fedora or something, whatever.
I guess there's two issues to this, because one is selling privacy as a feature, but the other is, how does a regular person know whether or not something has privacy? Someone slaps, it's private on their advertising stuff.
That's interesting, because I was sitting here listening and thinking, and believe it or not, the vast majority of people out there, they don't care about privacy. Don't kid yourself that they care, because they don't.
I agree with you in theory, but actually, if you say to people, are you okay with the idea of your emails being read? Most people go, oh, to be honest with you, not really. They're not going to do anything about it, but they do care about it. And therefore, the way you fix that is, like I say, by having whoever comes up with a way of selling it as a thing that people decide they want.
Yeah, I think when I say they don't care, as you say, if you turn around and say, oh, they're selling your data or whatever, then they might get a bit umpy. But if Google produced, I don't know, some other feature, people would sign up for it. They don't care.
You're talking about can a company come along and sell privacy as a feature, and I think a company is, and that company is Google. They're pushing the creepy line, they're beyond the creepy line at this point, and people are noticing. The amount of times I speak with non-techie people and they say, this advert's come up, how do they know I wanted that? Yeah. And they're the architects of their own demise. If they go out of business in 20 years' time because of this privacy stuff, they will be the people who have sold it, not another company coming along.
But I mean, Amazon does just exactly the same. Certainly for myself, you just browse a product, and lo and behold, you get an email on it 2 days later, and you're like, whoa, hang on a minute.
Audience question here.
The trouble is, if all of their friends are already using WhatsApp, you're never going to get them to use Telegram.
I think you just perfectly proved how hard it is to know what's secure and what's not.
Another question for the audience here.
And am I right in understanding that actually WhatsApp got really big before they added the text secure stuff as well? So people didn't really care about whether it was secure or not, they just knew everyone was using it.
I rest my case.
Yeah, they got big and then they got secure. It's nice of them for getting secure, thank you very much, WhatsApp. But they didn't get big because they were doing that.
Yeah.
Question from the audience or comment up here? Well, it sounds relevant to me. What does the panel think?
What do you mean about news aggregation? Yes.
Well, whereas otherwise it's up to whichever newspaper you read or which news channel you watch.
But at least they have editors who have some sort of interest in doing it properly, rather than Facebook who just want the most clicks.
I believe I would dispute that. Speaking as a Guardian reader, every single other newspaper puts a political bias on the news, but not my newspaper, because that's fine. But more seriously, yes, essentially the choice that you make of which newspaper you read reinforces your political beliefs or whatever. The concern is that people are, in quotes, choosing Facebook as their way to consume news, but they don't realise they're making that as a choice. People aren't going, I choose Facebook to consume my news rather than these alternatives, just I use Facebook and oh, the news has arrived, great. So they don't realise they're reading, you know, the filtered equivalent of the Sun or the Mirror or the Telegraph or the Guardian or whatever, but they are. It's like if someone said, I want to read a newspaper every day, but you only tell them that the Mail exists. At which point they read it every day and go, but I read the news, that's fine, and don't actually appreciate, they don't realise they made a conscious choice to read news of a particular political slant.
Right, there's a hand up there. You got nothing to hide.
So where does it go? If technology is here to make our lives better, which I think is how we want to use it, shouldn't we be able to come up with a way for these systems to allow us to share information securely, rather than just saying there's no way of doing it, we've got to write letters and send everything in sealed physical envelopes?
Yeah, I would like to be able to have secure conversations with people who are more than 10 feet away from me. The idea of limiting my circle of people who I can communicate with on a secure basis to only those in the same building as me is not something from the Middle Ages. The point of the internet is to avoid that, right? To disintermediate it. I don't want to have to go. I think that if I want to give someone my bank details so they can pay something into my account, it would be convenient if I didn't have to get in a car and drive to Glasgow and write it on a piece of paper. We've only got half an hour left.
Ooh. Right, there's another hand up here.
No heckling from the audience. I haven't seen the article. I would like to correct the record in one small thing. I think there should be a trusted source, and we should trust it. And I would like Google to be that trusted source. I'm not sure they are. I'd like them to be. I didn't see the thing about them being a CIA front from day one. No. Yes.
You talk about single point of failure there, and that is a very good point. If we put all our trust in one entity, be it Google or Apple or whoever, then we have that single point of failure. Surely a distributed peer-to-peer system where we put our trust in the algorithm that we can all see as free and open source software, surely that is the solution to, you know, the one thing that we should trust, rather than having to trust a company.
Well, you're some kind of communist.
The trouble with that is...
I kid. The point about that is, I agree with you completely. Yes, that would be great, but the rest of the business and monetarily organised universe doesn't work like that. The reason XMPP, which is in theory great for federation, doesn't actually work anywhere now is because everyone who did it, Facebook was based on XMPP, Facebook Messenger, Google Talk was, but they all turned off federation because if you're winning, you don't want to enable your competitors. I wish you were obliged to enable your competitors, but you're not obliged to do it. No one wants to do it, and it just doesn't happen. And we can continually invent great federated schemes and things where everyone needs to cooperate all the time, but you can't make people cooperate, and you can't incentivize them to if they're better off by not doing so.
And if all that's true, then why does email still work?
It's been grandfathered in. If you invented email today, right now, today, no one would adopt it. One of the reasons I like email is because it is the only proper distributed service we have left. Everything else now,
the web,
roughly is centralised. The web, yes. Hooray for the web. I love the web to bits, and that's why. But that's the point. Email, if you invented email right now today, no one would adopt it. They'd all go, well, let's just use Facebook Messenger. And that's why you see people like Facebook attempting to make email go away by providing their own private conversation messaging inbox systems. You hear people say, oh, I'll inbox you, right? For which they need to be beaten to death, by the way. But they're not talking about sending an email. They're talking, saying, send me an email to my daughter, for example, who's 15. Is like, I referred to a record the other day, like, you know, the thing that you play. And she didn't know what I was talking about. I've never been so generation gapped in all my life. It was terrible.
The really scary thing along those lines is I know people who say, oh, I sent you an email, when what they mean is I sent you a message on Facebook.
Exactly.
It's just an electronic message. It doesn't matter whether it's email or not, whether it's locked into a particular walled garden or whether it's an open standard. It's email.
Email was designed in the days when you weren't making money out of building protocols, and exactly everyone was motivated by the idea that everyone could build their own mail servers, everyone could compete. That was fine, not a problem at all, because there was no money motivation. Now, most work is done by people who have a financial stake in it, and if you've got a financial stake in it, you do not want to enable your competition.
No.
And the answer to this should be something like Diaspora, where the community runs all the nodes. The trouble is, no one wants to run a node, and you end up with everyone using the central Diaspora thing, and then it falls over because too many people are trying to use it.
Diaspora is fucking terrible. It's awful.
Yeah, because no one's interested in it, so it doesn't get better.
Yeah.
Chicken, egg, chicken.
Hand up in the audience here.
sort of a situation that I was in a while ago, which kind of highlights why Google is a bad solution. It's my partner is a nurse, and she's in a union, and like many unions, they have a disagreement with the government over various things, and it's, as a negotiating body, it's bad for the person they're negotiating against to know everything about you. How do they communicate with their members in a way that the government can't intercept? And Google gives the government a very easy way of intercepting the emails going between the union members and the union.
Well, you could have sent it in. You could have used PGP to encrypt your email between people on private servers.
No, you could have done that.
Yeah.
No, yeah,
Exactly.
no. I'm not saying PGP is easy to use or widely used. Yeah.
It is, I agree, it is troublesome to have to trust someone else to do this stuff for you, right? Yes, I would much prefer a world in which I get secure email and I don't have to be a sysadmin and I don't have to trust Google to do it for me. It's a pipe dream. It's really hard to do this, and there's no motive for anyone to provide that other than out of the goodness of their heart because they're open source people or whatever. And we've spent 20 years trying to build this stuff, and it's really difficult. So my inclination is to not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. To say, okay, let's take what we've got and try and work out ways of not exposing ourselves too seriously to it. So if you're using, so when you're browsing the web, yes, maybe you've got a Google account, but also install the EFF's privacy badger as an extension. So you're not passing back details of every website you go to Google on every website you go to, right? Take some relatively easy, relatively simple steps to protect yourself from massive overreach. But in essence, at the moment, your choice is either trust Google and essentially hope that they don't decide to just give over your data to the government, or learn to be a system administrator, and that's your option.
Yeah, hand up here.
So what is it that the smaller companies are doing different which makes them trustworthy?
It's not just about whether they might go out of business. If you receive a national security letter as a small company, you could stand and fight that. But it will require you to dedicate your life to fighting it for 3 years. It will cost you hundreds of thousands of pounds to do so. When faced with that, an awful lot of small companies will go, well, we don't like doing this, but we'll quietly roll over. The number of people who are running Lava-Bit and are prepared to stand up that much, I wish it was more, but I honestly can't fault someone for not being prepared to do that. Whereas Google, probably. Apple, probably, are in a position where they can actually fight that fight on my behalf. And a smaller company, yes, they are less likely to be targeted. Yes, they are more likely to try and costlessly hold back. But if confronted with the armies of state, I think most small companies would roll over, and I'm not sure Apple would.
I think there's a difference though between Google and a small company, in that Google's business model is based around them being able to access your data. A small company could have a completely different business model, so that data they didn't have access to it, even if they were storing it. So they could have the national security letter, and they could turn around and say, well, we can't get you that data.
We can't give you the data that you're asking for because we never had it in the first place. Yes, hence the end-to-end security, and Mozilla doing that kind of end-to-end security or everything they do for exactly that reason. They're not capitalising on your data. But in general, again, we, the denizens of the internet, not just people in this room, but everyone in the world, we've decided collectively that we're basically not interested in paying for stuff if we can get it for free and give up data instead. I mean, people put their hands up earlier, and I said, who's got a Google account? And like the whole entire room put their hands up. How many of you pay for a monthly service on the internet? Doesn't matter what one. Very good, nice one. I'm impressed, people.
How many of you keep your hands up if it's not Netflix? Okay.
I didn't mean Netflix. I mean email or something. Netflix. Shut up.
Or Amazon Prime.
It would be interesting to do that survey out in the world, because I think most people. It's not that they've made a conscious decision. I'm not going to pay. I think people are genuinely surprised at the idea that internet services might cost money, because I turn on my computer and there they are, and they are free. Hooray! The whole they're selling your personal data. You explain it to people, and in my experience, they go, "Really? That's terrible." And then you say, well, stop using Facebook. They go, oh, I want to talk to my friends and whatever. But I think it comes as a surprise, but they don't realise they're making a conscious choice to fund a service with their personal data rather than their money. They just don't realise there was even a choice there at all. And this is what I mean about the kind of the public awareness thing. Someone works out a way of explaining that in a way that everyone gets it and suddenly starts thinking, oh, maybe I don't want to do that. Huge revolution.
WhatsApp charge money?
Really?
Yeah.
Like £1 a year, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not much, admittedly, but they do it because they made it very easy to do. You click on a button once, and then...
And you don't have to do that until after your first year, when all of your friends are already using it for all of your conversations. And so you go, oh, a quid, that's fine.
If you don't pay the £1, they cancel your account. Or they hold your account to
I've not got to that point yet.
I did, and they wouldn't let me open the app anymore.
It was run by Somalian pirates. That's appalling. Really? Did everyone else know this? Am I the only person alive who didn't know this?
Yes.
Hands up if you knew that WhatsApp charges you money. Oh, well, shut up.
Most. Don't worry, Stuart, I didn't know either, because I've never used it.
I don't use WhatsApp, I use Telegram. This is why, clearly.
So what you need is to do exactly what they've done. They've made it incredibly easy to use. An app that you install, they took your phone number straight away, you didn't even have to create a username, and a year later you get a thing, oh, it's a small amount of money, oh, fair enough, I use it, click pay. Someone needs to do that with the...
We'll call this the heroin dealer business model. That's what it is. They seduce you, and then after a year they go, right, pay money or lose your account.
So what's a better model than that for... I mean, this sounds like this works. This gives us a paid service, and you're saying, no, this isn't good enough because it doesn't work the way I want it to.
I'm saying it's a brilliant model. It's just evil.
I'm not saying it doesn't work. They're making a useful service, and then they're letting you use it, and then they say, oh, at the beginning they say, it's a commercial service, and then after a period of time they start charging you for it. It's what most subscription services do. It's just a smaller period of time, but you get the first month of Netflix for free. Well, no, you don't. You defer payment to the end of the first month. With this, you defer payment to the end of the first year. It's exactly the same thing.
It's try before you buy. It's been around forever.
It's very clever. I can't help but feel slightly sandbagged by it. but so that seems like an excellent model. The problem is, again, we collectively, the open source community, have not had a great deal of success coming up with some kind of killer app that people wouldn't rather just leave than pay £1, which is, worrying.
There's a hand up there, I think.
I think so. I think I agree with Chris. I've always thought that.
I think the scale of it has changed a huge amount over the last 90 years or whatever it was. Back in the day when one man had to open a letter, read it, put it back in, he could do 100 letters a day or whatever. Now one guy at a keyboard. And being able to do it on such a large level, it allows you to do things that wouldn't have been possible before. Things like I mentioned earlier with the unions, just being able to know the entire negotiating position of the union. If Thatcher had had that during the miners' strike, it would have just ended almost instantly.
You say one guy at a keyboard, but you know, it's with the amount of data available, it can't be a person at a keyboard. It becomes algorithms, and algorithms can, well, they analyse stuff and they make patterns, and those patterns aren't necessarily what the person looking at the results might think they are. So, in fact, I think it's more dangerous it's not the same thing as you know, people who are sending messages by post. Those letters might be read, because it's not just certain communications which are subject to this. It's all of our pictures, all of our conversations, our financial transactions. It's everything.
And more worryingly, algorithms have much more potential to do wrong on a larger scale. I mean, yes, fine, Emily Pankhurst got the vote, but equally she never found herself on a no-fly list because someone with the same name as her might have done something dodgy 5 years previously. The reason that protecting ourselves from this kind of invasive surveillance is important is because claiming that it doesn't matter because you've got nothing to hide is like claiming that freedom of speech isn't important just because you've got nothing to say.
Hugman's had his hand up for ages, so go again.
You're relying quite heavily on the rhetorical device of there must be something in between. The important thing is not the technical mechanism by which we do it, it's convincing people that it's important at all. I don't think I'd agree with that, actually. I think, yes, people aren't necessarily marching in the street because the government are reading their email, but everyone's kind of aware that the government might be reading your email now in a way that they weren't before. There has been a genuine increase in awareness in the general public about the fact that this kind of thing happens, and maybe you ought to think about it. Exactly as Jay said, people will say, oh, I use WhatsApp, and it's secure now. I mean, yes, whether they've done a proper security assessment and actually correctly assessed whether it's secure or whether it's the most secure thing is not the point. People are seeing that as a benefit. They're just not seeing it as enough of a benefit to move to things which provide it exclusively. But people are seeing it as kind of a tick list feature. Ah, WhatsApp's secure, great, I want to. It's important. And that reading our email for 20 years, but it happened, and now make the best of it.
But I still say at the end of the day, when these sorts of things crop up, you know, everybody goes, oh, God, that's terrible. 2 days later, they're back to using it again. You know, people really don't care. They really don't. Yeah, they just don't care. And you've got to remember as well, what we're talking about here, we're talking about two types of consumers. You've got your business consumer that would use Oggcamp, and I'm seeing a massive increase. we provide our own cloud service as well to our customers, and I am getting...
Can we trust you?
Yeah, implicitly. And I'm seeing a big increase in competition in that field. Every man and his dog is at that just lately. Welcome to the AC podcast, by the way. Chop me off at the legs. I was talking then.
No, go on.
No. You've upset me now.
We can have a fight. Should we end it with a fist fight? No, go on, Ak, if you've got something to say. Well, we've got 3 minutes left, and was there a hand up somewhere here? Ah. Yeah, go on then.
It'll get hacked.
Right, one quick final point from Mark then.
Well, I'm just wondering if the answer to all of this, for the sake of our own sanity, is that we get on with it and we let all the people who don't care suffer.
Sounds like a good idea to me. Good point to end on. So yeah, thanks to Mark, Ben, Stuart, and Pete. And so yeah, what's happening now is we can go and get drunk. I made a note of this. Hang on. So Constellations is the place that we're supposed to be going to, which is next to the Camp and Furnace, which is where we went last night. And that's from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Now after that, there's going to be a kind of paid for Halloween party, which is I think £15 or something. It's German techno, which Doesn't sound very good to me. So it looks like we're going to be moving from there. There's no firm plan at this stage, so watch Twitter for at Oggcamp or the Oggcamp hashtag, and I'm sure that between us we're good enough to, good enough at this stuff to communicate and work out where we're all going.
Joe, just to, sorry, I might have misheard you. Did you say we were going to Camp and Furnace, or did you say it's near Camp and Furnace?
No, I said it's next to the Camp and
Okay,
Furnace.
next Camp and Furnace, good.
Yeah.
Constellations.
Constellations is what the place is called. I have absolutely no idea, I'm afraid. Aha! The chief himself. Give him a round of applause, come on.
God, I really hate talking to crowds. Right, Constellations. We've been told they cannot cater for all of us at once because we're going to DDoS the place. So, you can go out and get your own food in the lovely city of Liverpool. It's Halloween. It's going to be full of weirdos tonight. It's going to be great. But, yeah, standard night, really. Constellations, 6:30, turn up, get a drink. Everyone gets their first drink free of charge. There's tokens to be given out. So, have a nice time tonight. Drink, be merry, get here tomorrow morning, have a hangover. Okay? You are getting none. The tokens were given out by the pub themselves. So when you get there, you'll get a token. Don't worry about that, it's all taken care of. Those four on my left are looking at me and going, I want more than one token.
If I go out and come back in with a hat, do I get a second token?
Right, thanks very much, everyone. Go away!